Week 6. What are we doing? We're almost halfway home here in the college football world. But that just means there's more opportunities to put bets on the board. And I'm betting you at OddsShopper is what we're about to do. So strap in, sit down, relax. Let's dive into this slate. We're going to break down all the big time games. We're going to talk about what we got going on here, answer some questions, look at some lines, take some early bets, favorite plays, live dogs. You guys know the drill. I'm Ben Reza. That's Matt Gajewski. Let's get to it, sir. I was telling you, first of all, you gave me your cold. I have a cold now. You seem recovered. Now I'm sick. What's going on? We saw some interesting things last week in week 5.
We did. We saw the game of the year, Alabama and Georgia, which was absolutely electric with the comeback Georgia almost made, and Alabama gets it done. From a betting perspective, it was a good week, my best week of the year, which was nice to just see like a shot go through the hoop because it's been an awesome year for closing line value. And then to realize almost none of it has been extremely frustrating. So as many of you know who watched last week's video, I turned down my volume, which, even though it was turned down, it's still good to have a profitable week. Would have been way better if I actually played the regular volume I play. Generally, anytime the model shows value, I just fire at it, and then I stop doing that because everything was losing that got closing line value. But it was nice to see the games that were flagged as potential winners win along with the ones that were actually played. So, yeah, good week overall, and it's about time.
Okay, so a couple things. One, the game of the year was last week, but it was UMass and Miami of Ohio, which was an absolute war, and UMass lost in overtime. Which was
Miami, Ohio lost 4 starters in their secondary in that game.
Yeah, it was quite a scene. 2, that the wide receiver on Alabama, Mr. Williams, the 17-year-old, versus the wide receiver on Ohio State, who I think is 18, Mr. Smith. Serious talent out there at wide receiver. Both of them look like absolute studs. Just ridiculous. Now, I had a decent week as well. Boise State has maybe the best player in the country. Unbelievable. SMU was really good. But once again, what is wrong? There's no explanation. But Auburn is so incredibly disturbing. What they did on that football field, how they lost that game. That was a crucial game for me. I cannot believe they lost that game.
Their post-game win expectancy, I don't have it in front of me, but I looked at it, obviously. It was like 97 and some change %.
Yeah, again, that's 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, they should damn near be close to undefeated right now heading into this game. But they keep turning it over. And we talk about this with like Texas State and stuff. At some point in time,
they lost too.
Yeah, they did. Same thing with them as usual. But, at some point, the volatile stat that is turnovers eventually becomes not so volatile over a longer sample. So, I mean, at some point you have to really look into this. And it's not all the pick six Peyton Thorne's fault. They were out there missing field goals. So even if you have the pick six and you just hit your field goals, you actually still win the game. Covering is a different story. But, I mean, I had them at a dog price, so they could have lost the game and, still covered. But, yeah, man, I honestly, I don't feel as bad about that because I got extremely lucky with Rutgers on Friday night, who was kind of just the absolute inverse of that. So there's some give, there's some take. Mostly this year it's been giving and very little taking with these missed extra points and field goals and things. I've been on the wrong end of a vast majority of them. But this week it came out as a wash, so I can't really complain about Auburn too bad. They might be on the ban list.
I'm complaining, but that's neither here nor there. That's what I'm here for, to complain and to remind people to hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, don't miss out on any of this content. Subscribe. It's time to get into some plays. We start with Syracuse and UNLV, who, I mean, no disrespect to Mr. Sluka. I guess they didn't miss him too much because they were just rolling along. Let's see, what do we got here? So this is an interesting game, and let's dive into a little more because UNLV, it's their best season like ever apparently, and they are what I think is a pretty sizable favorite at home. I was a little surprised here. This is a Friday night game. What do you make of it? And do you think Syracuse can kind of stop this streak?
I think it's too many points, even though Syracuse is having to travel in this spot. Both these teams are power rated pretty high. And I do think it was an overcorrection last week when the line moved after Sluka elected to leave the program. This was as competitive as a quarterback battle as you're going to see heading into the regular season. And Malik Williams was right there for it. Now he comes out and looks amazing in their first game with him. So I think that's a lot of the reason why you see the line moving here. There's a lot of narrative surrounding him. He was there all spring and summer. Sluka was there just in the summer. Allegedly, that has led to more chemistry with players like Ricky White. I'm not sure I 100% buy this. And then the other things I think are just very, very solid for this team. Defensively, we love their personnel coming into the year. Jalen Catalan is finally playing like the freshman All-American he once was with Arkansas. It's a very good team, but at the end of the day, I don't think they're vastly different than Syracuse. You look at what this team has put on the field so far. They beat Houston, who's a corpse. Yards per play was actually pretty close in that game. It was 5.0 to 4.1. They had a 13% post-game win expectancy against Kansas. Kansas just handed them that game. And then they beat Fresno State. That was a very solid win for this team, so I can't really take anything away from them there. But Syracuse, on the other hand, has been a solid team as well. They beat Georgia Tech in a close game. They lost to Stanford in a game that they absolutely should have won. It was 6.2 yards per play to 5.0 for Stanford. Very shady stuff in that game for Syracuse. And then the rest of their schedule is pretty easy. But ultimately, when you look at how these teams are comprised, UNLV has to be playing from ahead unless Malik Williams is an all-star passer. We haven't really seen it. It's been an extremely small sample, but this team is, aside from the service academies, they are the run-heaviest team in the entire country. So that's a concern for me. They played a very easy schedule, and when they did step up against Kansas, Devin Neal was at 5.2 yards per carry. Daniels himself was at 6. It's just Daniels throwing the ball to the other team that allowed UNLV in that game. The big concern I have with this is Syracuse does have a bad run defense. They've allowed a ton of production to opposing backs. They allowed over 200 yards to Ohio's back, Anthony Tyus. They actually did a good job on Jamal Haynes, and it was Haynes King that really got them. And then Stanford had a decent amount of situational success against them. Chris Davis was at 8.8 yards per carry. Stanford uses a million backs, so a lot of these are on really small samples, but it is a legitimate concern against this power run game for UNLV. But ultimately, I think when you see this defense, UNLV's that is, going up against the Syracuse air raid offense, I don't think they've been tested enough to really come to a strong conclusion. Syracuse is 15th in offensive efficiency. McCord has been just fine for this team. Jackson Meeks, the transfer, has been awesome, and they needed somebody to just be a baller opposite Oronde Gadsden so teams just can't key on them. LaQuint Allen's been fine. The offensive line is average for this team. So I think it's too many points when you have a team like UNLV who's run hotter than the sun, winning a game with a 13% post-game win expectancy against a comparable team. When you look at Syracuse versus Kansas, they're very close, as are UNLV and Syracuse here. It's nearly a touchdown. I grabbed a 6.5. 6, I think, is fine. I was waiting for a 7, but as soon as that 6.5 started to meet some resistance, I just bought in because I don't think it will actually get to the 7.
That's what I wanted to ask you. There are a couple 6.5s out there. You can grab it. No problem. -110. Very, very simple. I haven't seen a 7. I don't think we're going to.
Me either. I was hoping. It popped for 10 minutes. It was severely juiced, so it wasn't even worth grabbing. It's the same as a 6.5 at that point. But doubt it's coming back.
Keep an eye on it, folks. This is a cool game. Missouri and Texas A&M. Missouri, I don't know. They played with their food a little bit at times, but they're here. They have obviously a stern road test against Texas A&M, who they got it done. I wasn't overly impressed. I'm not a big Arkansas fan, but they got it done in Arlington. So they move here and they're a slight favorite. What do you make of this? Obviously, just a strong SEC clash.
Both teams playing with their food quite a bit. Missouri had a 27% post-game win expectancy against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt missed a field goal in overtime. That game was crazy with the missed field goals too. Missouri missed 3 of them. Vanderbilt missed 2. And that's a place to start immediately. If this is a close game, Missouri special teams are terrible. They do not have a good kicker. They missed that one guy. What was his name? Mevis or something. from last year. I can't remember.
Oh, that guy was the man. That guy was the man.
He hit all the clutch kicks, and whoever they're trying out now hits 0 of them. But Texas A&M also has had 2 games in a row sub 50% post-game win expectancy, 47% against Bowling Green. Great. Bowling Green's a solid MAC team, but they're still a MAC team. 37% against Arkansas. I mean, fire Sam Pittman right now. He needs to win these games. Arkansas had some egregious turnovers in this game that led directly to Texas A&M points. I mean, both these teams, based on some of these metrics, should be sell highs, but they're facing each other. So you have to pick one. I tentatively side with Missouri, and it's because I think they're the more complete team, and I don't think they've played up to their true talent. They actually don't grade out very well from a pass game perspective, which is shocking to me because all of their main skill position players are back. Brady Cook has been fine, nearly 69% completion. He's taking care of the ball, and he gives you some mobility. Their offensive line has been solid too. They're 20th in pass blocking, 8th in run blocking. I think why they come in a little bit below average is because a lot of their players have been banged up. Luther Burden has been in and out of some games. Same thing with their tight end, Brett Norfleet. They all project to be healthy, and they're coming off a bye. So I think they haven't quite played up to their potential. And we've seen it last year. This offense was dynamic with the same exact skill players. Now, facing Texas A&M's defense is a different story. They've shown improvement. They still don't grade out all that well in efficiency metrics. And I think some of it is, when you play Taylor Green, you're going to look pretty good. They're still 93rd in coverage, which was their big concern heading into the year. It's all young players and transfers. So the situational cracks are enough for me to think Missouri moves the ball here. And on the other side, as good as Marcel Reed has been, teams have figured him out a little bit as a passer, especially. His completion percentage has dropped to 54%. He's not really turning the ball over, but he's not really adding anything either. He only has 2 turnover-worthy plays, which is great. But they can't actually move the ball through the air. So they're a one-dimensional offense, which has been okay because their offensive line is still good. It's a top 30 unit, both pass blocking and run blocking. And Le'Veon Moss has been a monster. He had an awesome game against Arkansas, over 9 yards per carry. But Missouri's defense has stood up when they faced decent competition, 19th in total defense, top 60 everywhere, and top 25 in both run defense and pass rush. So that's a good stylistic matchup for Missouri. They line up well against where Texas A&M succeeds. It's their coverage, which is also a little bit of a concern, which makes sense. They lost 2 DBs to the NFL, like Enos Rakestraw. But I don't know. It's been volatile. I tend to want to buy low on Missouri. The reason I haven't played this is Texas A&M has taken some money. And I guess the only real concern is if Wegman comes back, maybe he's just a better passer than Marcel Reed. I don't think that's clear, though. He had a terrible game against Notre Dame. It's Missouri or pass. I'll likely play this if it gets to 3.
There's a couple 2.5s, so we'll keep an eye on it. I'm with you. It's Missouri or pass for me. I'm just not sold on A&M. I've tried to buy them in several spots, including last week, and I wasn't overly impressed. So keep an eye on that spot. I don't think there's an urgency to play it because it's more likely to get to 3 than do anything crazy the other direction. Iowa, not Iowa State. It would be a lot cooler if this was Iowa State, but it's not.
Iowa State, we got to talk about them on the grease.
Oh, we will. They've been low-key awesome. This is a 20-point spread. Again, Ohio State, I know they haven't had their chance, and they'll get it, I believe it's next week against Oregon. But in the meantime, they have to beat up on the carcass that is Iowa football, even though Iowa's been a little better. Still don't really think this game is going to be all that close. Talk to me. I mean, I don't want to tangent the show because we have so many games to get to. How good is this guy though? Jeremiah Smith.
Oh, he's awesome.
Like, but people are like, oh, he should just be in the NFL right now.
I think you could legitimately make that argument. I want to see more against better competition. Ohio State has not played the most difficult slate of games, but you've seen some of the crazy. He had a one-hander last week, which was nuts.
He had a second one, yes. And then he scored on the ground. He has been unreal.
Yeah, it's a fantastic freshman receiver class. I'm glad these guys are actually getting opportunities right away because if Jeremiah Smith played at Iowa right now, he would be on the bench behind Jacob Gill and these other players. So, yeah, I don't know if he would be like the number 1 receiver off the board, him or Williams, because there are some elite players like Ted McMillan, Isaiah Bond has elite speed, and like Luther Burden is also electric. So if you could come out right away, this would be maybe a receiver class that rivaled last year. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Luckily, he does play for Ohio State. And my big worry in this game is just that Ohio State baptizes a team eventually. They've been playing with their food a little bit by choice. And it's not even playing with their food. Their margin of victory has been enormous in all these games. They're just tasked with like covering 45-point spreads. So sometimes they have, sometimes they haven't. It's partially why I don't like betting those games is when it's the fourth quarter and you're up by 40, you have to bet if the backups are actually going to get it done. But yeah, that's basically been every game this year. They beat the absolute snot out of Michigan State. And I'm worried that they might just do the same thing to Iowa. And the reason is Iowa's shown some cracks on both sides of the ball. Their biggest crack, obviously, is they can't throw the ball whatsoever. And I think they've been kind of fortunate that other teams have let Caleb Johnson absolutely win the game for Iowa in a couple circumstances now. Caleb Johnson is awesome. He's a top 5 running back. Objectively, like I ran my prospect model just to see, someone asked in Discord, and he came out number 2 behind Ashton Genty, which is
that guy.
Yeah, believable, right? Genty was number 1. Who would have thought?
Yeah, shocking.
But I mean, you stop Caleb Johnson, and how does Iowa move the ball? The offensive line for Iowa has been great. They've been paving the way for Johnson, and the yards after contact, forced missed tackles has been great for him too. But it's like, okay, let's play 8 in the box. Like, let's just defend Iowa how we would defend Michigan. Let Cade McNamara, Jacob Gill, Reese Vanderzee beat us in the pass game. I think that's very live. Ohio State is awesome on defense everywhere. They returned almost everyone from last year's team. The only addition they had to make was at safety, and it turns out they go and grab a freshman All-American from Alabama. I mean, like, just so many rich, talent, dense position groups on this team. On the other side, Iowa's defense is still very good. They've shown cracks, and it's because of Nwankpa and TJ Hall. This is the revolving door in Iowa's secondary. There's 2 spots now that I don't think they've quite figured out. They're getting above average play there, but we saw Troy hit some bombs against this team. It's been situational, production allowed, and it's just these 2 players. And it makes sense. They've been benched repeatedly, both of them. Nwankpa got benched in their last game. And now you're taking these 2 potential holes in the secondary, lining that up against Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Ibuka, Carnell Tate. Will Howard hasn't needed to do anything. They barely ran him, which was supposed to be one of his skills. Not to mention, if you dedicate extra resources to that, good luck stopping Trevion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. I don't want to take this. I don't like betting the big spreads in conference, but I just don't see any way it's not Ohio State. Like, it has to be Ohio State or pass.
Oh, it's definitely Ohio State or pass. And there's a 19.5 at -110 out there. That's pretty good. Yeah, Ohio State, they just ultimately, you mentioned, their big problem. Oh, yeah, they just bring in Caleb Downs. Tough scene. Just insane on defense. I wouldn't be stunned to see them put it all together. My biggest worry is that they have Oregon on deck next week.
I get that too. Iowa's no slouch. This is a top 5 team in the Big Ten.
That's a good thing. This isn't 40 points. It's winning by 3. You can gear down and win by 28 or 31 or something like that. So definitely Ohio State or pass.
I'll say this. I'm waiting till it has to get closer to 17 before I take it.
Okay. That's fair. I don't know if it'll ever get there, but I think it'll just in between 17 and 21. I think you have a decision to make.
Agreed. Under 20 is pretty nice. There's still some equity at that number.
Yeah. And that is
19
out
is
there.
kind of 19, 18 is like full no man's land.
Yeah, I agree with that. Don't look now, but SMU is maybe BYU is just amazing. That's not true, but maybe because SMU they're starting to get it together now. Florida State's not a juggernaut, and that's putting it mildly, but this is a good test for them. 7-point dogs. I don't know what to make of Louisville. Notre Dame handled them. I didn't think it was anything egregious on any side. This is a good test for both teams. What do you make of the game?
Your SMU take is finally coming to fruition after can one team run hotter in turnover margin than BYU? I don't know if their defense is any good. They just continually, and dude, so many of these interceptions they have are just tip balls right to defenders. They had another one last week.
I don't know what to do about that because, SMU should just be undefeated. There's no doubt about it.
And it hasn't always looked pretty. They've had some turnover luck work their way themselves. TCU just flat out did not want to play offense. They were like, all right, let's just get our defense out here for 45 minutes of gameplay. And Florida State is a corp, so you can always expect TJs from DJ Uiagalelei. There were plenty of them, including a pick six. So, yeah, I mean, SMU has run a little hot in turnovers too, but I think it's kind of evened out based on that BYU game. But overall, this is a team we thought was awesome coming into the year. They've had some noise in their box scores, but their efficiency still looks awesome. They have a great offensive line, 25th in pass blocking, 43rd in run blocking. Their skill position players are pretty good. Kevin Jennings, man, he had an awesome game against Florida State, which is not the defense we thought they were. But still, you always want your players to take care of business when they're expected to, and he did that. Smashed his receiving props, which was a big stand for me, the biggest prop stand I had all week. RJ Maryland is a dynamic tight end. Everyone else is just kind of average, but it's nice to see Jennings elevate them. He can run. He's done that really well situationally. Louisville's 13th on defense, but I think there's some noise here. They've only played Haynes King and Georgia Tech and then Notre Dame. They did a pretty good job bottling up that run game. There was a couple long runs, but I wanted to see that Louisville defensive line stand up to that test, and they did. This is the best unit they have on their entire defense. Ashton Gelati's awesome off the edge. They're third in run defense, 7th in pass rush, but they're 90th in coverage. So see Jennings actually move the ball through the air, I think is something that gives me confidence moving forward that they can do so against defenses like Louisville. On the other side, I mean, I am definitely worried about SMU's defense against this Louisville offense. I guess the big concern you'd poke with Louisville on offense right now is their interior played so bad against Notre Dame. They had Tyler Shug running for his life, which sucks because their tackles actually played really well. But I'm not surprised to see them come in 75th in pass blocking, 68th in run blocking to open the week. They do have a tough matchup against SMU's defense, who has the 33rd ranked pass rush and 6th ranked rush defense. It's going to be a tough defensive line they're facing. So that's the biggest concern I have with them. If they can hold up, they should be able to move the ball because Shug is awesome. He can move as long as he holds onto the ball at the end of runs and doesn't fumble after 50-yard runs. He's very efficient there. He did that against Notre Dame, which was frustrating. But they got back Colin Lacey. What an awesome one-handed catch. He provides a nice compliment to Ja'Cory Brooks. They needed that at receiver. They were getting nothing out of Chris Bell and Amari Huggins-Bruce and these other dust balls. But now they have two options. Isaac Brown looked awesome on the ground, which is solid because they've had injuries at running back. So if he can step up, that's something that should be solid for them. And while SMU's been good, they have shown some cracks. They did allow 9.2 yards per pass attempt to Josh Hoover. I still think it's too many points when you look at the talent across the board on both sides of the ball. I do think SMU is the more complete roster. It's built through transfers, and they've been up and down. But Louisville does have some cracks overall. I think mainly that interior offensive line and their defensive backs are the two ones to watch. And perhaps they get back Quincy Riley, one of their defensive backs at some point. He's supposed to be their number one corner. He missed their last game, but I'm not sure it matters. 95th or 90th in coverage is a very hard unit to fix. SMU or pass, I'm debating this at a 7, but what do you think? Are you still with your boys?
Of course. With my boys, I trust Jennings even more now. I like the number at 7. Not running to the window. I want to be clear. I know I haven't said that yet, but we'll get to some games that I like a little more. Definitely SMU and pass. I might look to the SMU money line. I think they can win the game.
I agree with that. I agree with that for sure. I thought Georgia, okay, one last thing. Georgia Tech should have covered that game. Holy smokes. They fumbled at the Louisville 6. They missed a field goal. They had a turnover on down at the Louisville 3. They had a field goal blocked for a touchdown, and they had a 4th and 1, a turnover on down at the Louisville 21. And they missed the cover by 1 point. You could tell I didn't bet Georgia Tech, and I'm definitely not frustrated about it.
No, not at all. Not at all. That would never happen. It sounds about right, though. All right, here we go. Now, a couple things. First of all, as I mention all the time, if you're looking to get that closing line value that never materializes on anything, Tails Marketplace is where you want to be. Me and Matt and so many different creators are there We're dropping picks like this. We have our Discord. You can ask us questions. You've been dropping just straight money with player props, things that we don't have time to get to early in the week. We may do some new shows. We may go with a live betting you. If you guys really want it, let us know in the comments. But it is there and available. The links are below. And also, talked about this last week, podcast review. We picked 2 people. Now, we appreciate our listeners. I did say to leave your email, and neither did that, but that's okay. You got to email us now. And the winners would be My Loop Card. And then the second name, I don't know. I'm just going to spell it out. It's ANCDEFGHOJ. If I just said your name on Apple Podcasts, you have to email support@oddshopper. Let them know. We'll verify, obviously, that it's you, and then you'll get your free Tails month from me and Matt. So appreciate all those entries. My Loop Card and that string of letters that I just said. We really appreciate those reviews. Get in contact with us. You can tweet me as well at JazzRazBats. Let's keep it moving. Here we go. Michigan. Michigan. Another team that blew a cover for me for reasons unknown last week because their reasons are unknown. So how could I possibly know why that happened? They are doing something that is unheard of, that will be studied for years in Ann Arbor. They have to travel to the game, not in their home stadium. Never heard of this before. Washington, of all places. Am I seeing this right? Am I missing something? What is going on with this line?
You mean Washington favored by 3?
I don't understand that. I really am not a fan of Washington.
I'm not either, but I've sort of been coming around to them.
Ooh,
and dude,
okay.
I honestly think it's just Jed Fish. After going back and rewatching some of their games, looking into their box scores, I thought it was predictable that Rutgers won that game and covered. That's what happened. But going back, I don't think I was right in thinking it was predictable. I actually think Washington should have pretty clearly won that game. They had a 72% post-game win expectancy. They also had a loss to Washington State that pretty clearly should have been a win. They vastly outgained them. There just have been a couple like weird, fluky things that have happened in their games. And I guess first and foremost, they don't have a kicker. So when games are close, they do fall victim to the volatility quite often. They missed 3 field goals against Rutgers in a game where they outgained them yards per play 7.9 to 5.2. That's a pretty good Rutgers defense, and they racked up almost 8 yards per play against that defense. And a lot of it is just they have some dudes on offense. Will Rogers has been awesome this year, completing nearly 75% of his passes, 9.2 yards per attempt. That stood up when they have gone into better competition. He has 0 interceptions, and he's not really running that hot. Only 2 turnover-worthy plays. They've been using him efficiently, and he's not losing the ball to the other team. The offensive line has been pretty good. They're top 60 in both pass blocking and run blocking. They've had some injuries there, and they've moved their interior guys a little bit, trying to find the best option, but it's a serviceable O-line. Their receivers, and a lot of them are transfer portal guys, have been awesome for this team. Players like Giles Jackson and Denzel Boston have really stepped up, and they've played much better than I thought they were going to coming into the year. And last of all, maybe it should be first and foremost, Jonah Coleman has been so good. He was another running back that came up in the top 5 of the most efficient backs in the country. He's big. He's hurdling dudes. Rutgers did a pretty good job bottling him up. I went back and I looked at how he created all his yards. 109 yards after contact. The Rutgers defenders could not get him on the ground. That's not typically a problem they have. I think it's just Jonah Coleman is an absolute wagon. So can Washington move the ball in Michigan? I think they can a little bit. And the real question should be, can they move the ball enough? Because Michigan can't move it at all.
No, they can't. That's true.
Michigan did a good job against Minnesota. They held them to 4.5 yards per play. That's awesome. But they can't move the ball at all. They were at 4.0 yards themselves. They cannot throw. Alex Orji's averaging 3.7 yards per attempt. You basically don't have to treat him like a quarterback. And when you can just bottle up Khalil Mullings and Donovan Edwards, the offense is so one-dimensional, it doesn't really matter. And then on the other side of this Washington team, they've been pretty good on defense. I've been shocked by this. A lot of them are transfers and guys Jed first had to bring, but they finished 27th overall, 29th against the run, 46th in pass rush, and 18th in coverage. They have not faced a good group of passers, I will say. Cole Snyder, John Mateer, Jack Lausch from Northwestern, and Nathan Kaliak-Manis. But where do you rank Alex Orji among those guys? Would you rather have Cole Snyder or Alex Orji?
I mean, I'm not
The fact
saying
that you didn't answer right away says
that's
no.
fair. Cole Snyder, that's a no. That's got Buffalo connections. That's a no.
That's Eastern Michigan's quarterback, just for reference. But the fact that you didn't snap your fingers, answer, it is Alex Orji. But the fact that you didn't snap your fingers, run that one to the window, says it all.
I mean, how many years has Cole Snyder been playing quarterback?
I think he's a 2019 recruit. I mean, he went Rutgers, Buffalo, Eastern Michigan.
Yeah.
Last thing I'll say on this, I don't know how serious this is, but Sharon Moore did a press conference and he had basically a laundry list of players that are working through something, was the quote. It was Makari Page at safety, Samaj Morgan at receiver, Will Johnson at corner, Miles Hinton at tackle, and Josiah Stewart on the edge. We already know that Colson Loveland's not 100%. I think all these guys play. I don't know if he's making excuses for the Minnesota game or what's going on, but those were all players that were mentioned. And last thing, maybe it's not all Orji's fault. Their offensive line is 111th in pass blocking. What they're trotting out at receiver outside of Loveland is negligence. So they're not helping him. It's not like he's working with Ohio State's receivers and all he has to do is deliver to his first read. These receivers are bad.
What about the under?
What is it at right now? It was pretty low earlier.
41.
I don't hate that. I don't know how Michigan scores.
I don't think, and I'm definitely more on the Michigan side than you, and I don't really know how Michigan scores either, but I don't think that Washington's going to have a lot of success. I really don't.
Here's how Michigan scored their points last week against Minnesota. Minnesota fumbled on their own 16-yard line, 16-yard touchdown drive, Michigan. Minnesota had a punt blocked, which led to an 11-yard touchdown drive. Most of Michigan's other points in that game were pretty good, but I mean, that's 14 points on 27 yards total. That's egregiously bad. Minnesota gave away, honestly, I don't know, like, there are ways Minnesota wins that game overall. I know they had the controversial onside kick. Removing that, they just handed Michigan points, man. And Michigan does have a good defense. They're alive to create turnovers, block punts, stuff like that, and get themselves in position to win games. And Washington does have really bad special teams, especially their kicker.
Yes.
But this is probably just a full pass for me, especially with it moving to 3. If you were a Washington backer, you would have loved it inside 3. It would probably have to go back there for me to consider it. But I just don't know how Michigan scores.
I'm looking at the under. I think this could be like a 20-10 game.
That's actually pretty nice. I should have considered that more. So it's at 41.
Yep, minus 108.
That's actually come up. I believe it opened at 40.5. Michigan's 132nd in pace. Washington's 103.
Yeah, I think both teams are going to be very comfortable. Give me those non-short fields. There's no way these teams are driving 10, 12, 14 plays on each other to manufacture points. That's just not going to happen.
And with Michigan, we usually don't spend a lot of time on Michigan's defense. I think it goes without saying they're very good. If they stop Washington in field goal range, you have one of the worst kickers in the country. You should feel pretty good about that.
You really should. This is in the Auburn bucket of missing 30-yarder, then a 25-yarder, and then Hugh Freeze says, let's try a 52-yarder. Shocking that didn't work. Probably the most surprising result last week was Ole Miss, in my opinion. I really didn't think there was much of a chance that they were going to go down, and it's just credit to Kentucky. They're always a tough out, and they proved it once again. You know, you can survive a loss. That's probably not the loss that you want to use your quote-unquote free square on. Now you got to hit the road. 9-point spread here. What's up with Ole Miss? Was that just a fluke or they have problems?
I think it was a fluke. They were almost 2 yards better in terms of yards per play against Kentucky. They did show cracks, though. Like, I do think concerns are valid. I believe they should have won the game. Post-game win expectancy, 51%, so suggests they should have, but it was a coin flip. You can't be mad at the outcome. But yeah, they moved the ball just fine on offense. They missed a field goal to tie the game, obviously. They had a fumble on the Kentucky 18. So they did some dumb things that hurt themselves in this game. But at the end of the day, they also allowed 8.7 yards per attempt to Brock Vandegrift. That is a concern, and it should be moving forward. That's nearly a first down every time Vandegrift drops back to pass. That's not what you want to see. I just don't know if I can buy South Carolina right now, who's run hotter than the sun on turnovers. I mean, we could use the transitive property. They played Brock Vandegrift as well. They only allowed 3.0 yards per attempt to him. Part of it was they got up very early in that game, forced them into predictable game scripts, and had some pretty ridiculous turnovers. Vandegrift also got benched in that game, so part of what they did was against Gavin Wimsatt. But yeah, South Carolina is very tricky to evaluate, in my opinion. They do not have a good offense. They're one-dimensional. Their offensive line is not good. They're not horrific, but they're certainly below average. 89th overall, or excuse me, 97th in pass blocking, 96th in run blocking. That's not great. So while Sellers hasn't been good, some of it probably isn't his fault. He has a 55% completion percentage. He's been running hot on turnovers, only 2 interceptions, but 6 turnover-worthy plays. I think he has pretty good mobility, but honestly, the O-line's so bad that sacks have kind of hurt his yards per carry. He's only at 3.5. His skill position players are not good. You have Rocket Sanders playing behind a bad offensive line, but these pass catchers stink. A guy like Nick Harbor, who was billed as maybe the heir apparent to this receiving core, hasn't been able to get on the field. He's a track athlete, but apparently that's not translating over to football very well. Ole Miss has a good defense still, even though they allowed 8.1 yards per attempt to Brock Vandegrift, or 8.7, whatever it was. They're very strong up front, and this should be a major concern against this patchwork South Carolina offensive line. Ole Miss is first in run defense and third in pass rush, and we love their players coming into the season. And some of the stuff allowed to Brock Vandegrift, so I watched that game. Sometimes I don't catch them all, and you can see the yards per attempt numbers. He's throwing like ridiculous passes downfield. Barian Brown's pushing off. It's not being called for completions. I do think the Ole Miss secondary is a little better than what we saw on Saturday, and they're 44th in coverage, so the efficiency metrics bear that out. I just don't think Sellers has a lot of success against this defense, which is going to get after him and maybe has a little bit of meat left on the bone in the secondary. And conversely, I think South Carolina's run a little hot in the turnovers. They have done a good job. I need to give them some credit, but Grant Wilson, Brock Vandegrift, they allowed production to Grant Nussmeier, and then they played Akron. Could their defense be a little inflated? Their 14th ranked coverage. They're also not good against the run, 69. So that could be an avenue Ole Miss tries to explore as well with their 18 running backs they use. Maybe Ole Miss just misses Jeremy James a lot on the O-line, but I still think they're pretty good. 31st in pass blocking, 16th in run blocking. They should be able to run it on South Carolina at the very least. I'm debating playing this. Inside 10 is nice. Just a little hesitation with South Carolina playing a little better than I expected. Ole Miss playing a little worse than I expected.
I agree. I think we're both kind of saying, though, that's priced in a little bit, in my opinion, at least. I
agree.
So sub 10, I kind of think I'm already paying for that, and I can live with it. I like Ole Miss in the bounce back spot. Now, I'm going to take great pleasure in the next game because I don't even think I'm going to bet it, but I just can't wait to watch it. And that would be Auburn going to the actual nut low spot that you could be, which is in Athens, off a heartbreaking loss. They're going to be quite angry. And I'm just going to, now I will say this, if Auburn does anything besides get absolutely stomped, I'm giving up on the entire season, but they're not. I don't really want to bet this game. I might bet truly the under on like an Auburn team total or something, but I don't have a lot to say here. Auburn's they have cost me more money than any team in the country by far this year.
I don't think I'll be betting this game either. I don't want to ever put like teams on the ban list because then you usually you box your. I say that those are just like the teams that have cost us the most money. For me, it's Kansas, UMass, and Auburn. But if you do that and you truly ban a team, you cost yourself out of some potential electric buy low spots. I don't know if it's here against Georgia. You mentioned the situational stuff. None of that works in Auburn's favor. At some point, like Auburn just might quit on the season, even though they've played really well. Their efficiency metrics are mind-blowing. How a team could run this poorly, I don't know. Sorry, you were going to say something?
Oh, no. I'm just relishing in the fact that I know it's frustrating. We talk about this in Discord a lot. These Auburn games are objectively impossible to lose multiple of them in a row like this.
You would think so. They had a 93% post-game win expectancy against Arkansas. I didn't even look against Oklahoma. I was so frustrated, but you guys know how that ended. Technically, they only missed 2 field goals. It was really 3 because one of them was a penalty. And they had a pick 6 with 4 minutes left to go in the game. They also had a turnover on down from the Oklahoma 1-yard line, 4th and 1, couldn't score at the 1-yard line. So, I mean, there were about 8 different ways they could have won that game, and somehow they found a way to mess up all 8 of them. Their efficiency metrics are good. This O-line is solid. They did lose to Xavier Miller in their last game, so that's a potential crack you could poke. But they're top 50 in both pass blocking and run blocking. They're keeping Thorne clean. It's not all Thorne's fault. He has 6 interceptions and only 3 turnover-worthy plays. Some of this comes down to his receivers, which have played poorly. They're still really talented. Like, you have a 5-star in Cam Coleman. Like, it's just don't give the ball to the defense. And I mean that literally. Don't set the ball into the air like it's a volleyball for the defender to pick off, and you don't have these problems. Their run game has been awesome. Just Damari Alston, please do not fumble as you're crossing the goal line to score. And it's crazy because teams usually have something like this happen, I don't know, once a year. Auburn has found a way to have it happen in every single game, multiple times. Their defense, the reason like they have these crazy turnovers and the reason they're not losing 45-3 is their defense is also amazing. They're 22nd overall, 11th against the run, 31st in pass rush, 76th in coverage with room for improvement because they've been banged up back there. But so I do think they're a good team. Normally I would be itching to get to the window to play them against Georgia, who's also amazing, but Auburn has these problems consistently. So it's when they add up is when I get worried. As you extend the sample, it doesn't become as volatile. And Georgia is an excellent team as well, getting healthier. They did see Michael Williams and Warren Brinson play in their front 7, but both of them were limited. They did not play anywhere near their full share of snaps. Jordan Hall came into the game as a game time decision. He didn't play at all. Those guys, I mean, it could go 2 ways. Either they were rushing them back to play against Bama. Now maybe they sit out, or they're just healthier, which I think is likely to be the case. Beck still had a pretty good game against Alabama outside of the turnovers. And some of them, like the last interception, Beck basically had to be a hero to even have a chance to win that game. Their run game is still fine. Their O-line is good even without Tate Ratledge. Their defense is still excellent. We're talking, top 50 at the very least in most categories, and that's only dropped because you face the wizard who is Jalen Milroe. All the situational stuff favors Georgia. I just think I'm going to end up with a full pass. If you want the under, definitely wait. It's screaming upwards because Auburn has all this meat left on the bone. Georgia is efficient on offense, and pace is good. It's 32 for Auburn, 61 for Georgia. I'm not going to touch that because of Auburn again, but if you do want an under, I would wait.
Yeah, this is like I said, typically I would be on an Auburn in this situation. Just the optics freak me out. First road game. There's just a lot of like weird stuff with this, but
you also don't know if so as good as Thorne has been and as bad as he's run with his 6 interceptions to 3 turnover-worthy plays, he's already benched him. Like,
oh yeah,
Hugh Freeze is not aware of this. Like, Hugh Freeze sees a receiver tip the ball straight to a defender, and he's like, all right, Peyton Thorne off the field. Like, maybe bench Cam Coleman. Like, maybe take the receiver that's being the idiot, not Peyton Thorne. Like, and Thorne will make mistakes. Like, the pick 6 was definitely his fault, but they're not all his fault.
They should put the kicker at quarterback, obviously, because that's
Hank Brown was even worse than Thorne. So if he comes in and you're holding a Georgia ticket, might as well just bring that directly to the window.
Yeah, that's when you can actually go. I don't advocate for cashing out, but you could cash out because the book will just give you full value. There won't even be a haircut. It'll just give you your full money right off the bat. No point waiting. Tennessee and Arkansas, more SEC clashes. Tennessee, I don't think they've been truly tested. I'm really not an Oklahoma fan, but you go into Norman, you get the job done. I believe they had did they have an off week last week? I can't remember who they played.
They were off.
Okay. Now you got to go and you take on Arkansas again. Sizable spread for the Vols. I think that's warranted. It is inside 2 scores. Does Tennessee simply just too much Nico, too much everything? And does that front really get to Taylon Green?
There's a good chance I end up with Tennessee on the ticket. I haven't played it, just waiting to see where it goes. And it's kind of been parked at this number. It hasn't really done anything. Tennessee has done everything we've expected them to. And I mean, it's not been the best level of competition. You play Chattanooga. Grayson McCall might just straight up be worse than Bailey for NC State. So I don't know if you really face like a great version of NC State, but you still killed them. So you did what you were expected to do. Kent State was on their third string quarterback, and obviously Oklahoma's looked much better since Jackson Arnold hit the bench. But still, at the end of the day, what has Tennessee done that has been below expectation? I don't think very much. Occasionally they have like an Iamaleava with a turnover-worthy play. He's a first-year starter. Like, he's going to have some of those. You have to live with it. But this team has been excellent overall, and they've answered every question that's been asked. And you guys know I'm no fan of Arkansas. They've been ping-ponging all over the place with post-game win expectancy. Like, they had the Oklahoma State game, which was wild, a double OT game. They beat Auburn with a 7% post-game win expectancy, and then they just lost to Texas A&M with a 63% post-game win expectancy. But what I can tell you is they're basically playing all these mediocre to bad teams, and now you definitely have a step up in competition against Tennessee. And what has Arkansas done when they've even slightly stepped up in competition? They've played two decent defenses. Taylon Green has looked like a pumpkin. He has decent overall efficiency metrics this year. They've plummeted, but if you isolate just the two SEC games, they're downright terrible. And I'll just go based on the season-long stats, and you can tell, like, he looked like a wizard against Pine Bluff, and he looked terrible against the SEC teams. 54% completion, 7.6 yards per attempt, 5 touchdowns, 5 picks, 8 big-time throws, 8 turnover-worthy plays. What games do you think the big-time throws happen? What games do you think the turnover-worthy plays happen? You guys already know the answer. He was really stifled rushing the ball last week, which is his biggest threat. The offensive line is bad, 88th in pass blocking. They can run a little bit. They're 36th in pass or run blocking. JaQuindon Jackson's been solid for that team too. But Tennessee's defensive strength is their front seven. This team is going to maul you up front. They did that against Oklahoma, who has a patchwork offensive line, but I don't think they're any better than Arkansas, at least not substantially. And that was the strength of Tennessee heading into the season when you just evaluate this team straight up. They're currently 10th in pass rush, 3rd overall defensive efficiency, 2nd in run defense. They're 23rd in coverage, but they haven't really been tested, and they haven't needed to be. Even against, like Hawkins for Oklahoma late in that game when he showed some flashes, Tennessee's pass rush was just getting home so fast that it didn't matter what happened in their secondary if they were beat at times, which is probably going to be the case again here against a bad pass blocking unit. They still don't have Kutas, that's Arkansas, and they lost their tight end. Luke Haas is doubtful for this game. That maybe makes a difference when you're pass blocking. On the other side, I think Tennessee moves the ball here. They're getting back both tackles, Lance Hurd, John Campbell. When they struggled in that game against Oklahoma, those guys went down. Iamaleava, 10 yards per attempt. Does have more turnover-worthy plays than I'd like at 5, but still not terrible. O-line is pretty good and will get better. Skill position players are just downright elite, adding guys like Chris Brazell to the crop you already had with Brew McCoy, Squirrel White. Arkansas's defense should be exposed here. 101st in total defense, 114th in coverage. The only reason I haven't betted is you might get a better number, honestly.
I hear you. I mean, I'm no fan of Arkansas. Tennessee's answered the call. Anytime you hit the road, you're always into a tough task, but they'll be ready to go. They can handle this. Inside 14 is everywhere. So if you wanted sub 2 touchdowns, you've got that number staring you right in the face. Couple more games I want to mention very quickly, though, with all the games, and we'll have plenty more on the Thursday episode. A lot of money to go around. You got to budget properly. One of the best ways to get additional action is to get bonus bets. Bet365 has one. Bet 5, get 200 in bonus bets. Win or lose that bet, by the way. It doesn't like, you have to jump through a hoop and hit a parlay and then you get $200 in bonus bets. No. Sign up. Link is below. Deposit 10, bet 5. Once that bet clears, you get 200 in bonus bets. You have to be 21 plus 18 in Kentucky. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Great way to get some additional funds so you can splurge on some of these weird games, kind of like Rutgers and Nebraska. These two teams, this could be an ugly game. But it's an important game for both squads, no doubt about it. 6.5, 7-point spread. Manungai and co will try to run it. I don't really know what's up with Nebraska, to be honest, but they are at home. What do you make of this game?
I think Nebraska's left some points on the board. They should have beaten Purdue much worse. They missed a field goal and had 2 field goals blocked. So their special teams not living up to expectation. But as usual, Purdue threw a pick 6 and Purdue missed a field goal themselves. But I wanted to bet Rutgers. The more I looked into it, the more I'm just a little nervous with this team overall. They were severely outgained, over 2.5 yards per play against Washington. Largely, they won because of missed field goals and a Washington turnover on down at the Rutgers 2-yard line. So their defense stood up when it mattered. But Rutgers has cracks on defense, especially against the run. I think that could be a concern against Nebraska. Right now, this Nebraska team has been pretty efficient on offense. They're balanced. But Rutgers, 81st in run defense, and what they've allowed has been pretty concerning. 9.2 yards per carry to Jonah Coleman. We already mentioned 109 of those came after contact, but they also allowed 8.1 to Bayshul Tootin, 12.1 to Jordan Simmons of Akron. They did return Tyree Powell and Wesley Bailey, who were starters last year. Both of them just got their feet wet last week. But this is still a concern. I'm not saying it's going to remain the same. It could improve, but I don't know. Nebraska has been a decent rushing attack so far. They're 55th in run blocking, 71st in pass blocking. The real concern I have is they keep losing guys in the offensive line. They obviously lost Teddy Prohaska at the beginning of the year. They've now lost Tanner Kokorin and Micah Mazkua. So they're playing with 3 guys that weren't projected to start at the beginning of the year. It's one of these matchups where neither is good. It's like, who wins out in the end? I legitimately don't know. But I don't think Raiola and Nebraska have a ton of success throwing against Rutgers defense. Their secondary is their strength. And then on the other side, I don't know how much the offensive line can move around this Rutgers front 7 that's been suspect. And I don't trust Ethan Kaliak-Manis. We didn't trust him at the beginning of the year. No. He's been fine, but I've seen too much Ethan Kaliak-Manis. And now this is the toughest defense that they've faced. This is a better defense on paper, according to efficiency metrics, than what Washington had last week. And Washington was very good. But they also make Kaliak-Manis look kind of bad. So this is going to be a full stay away from me. At plus 7.5, Rutgers would be a lean. I would debate that more. I did see it previously. It popped for a little bit. I'm not sure if it's still there. But I think I might just full stay away from this game with a lot of it coming down to weakness versus weakness. You never know how those play out.
Yeah, I'm not in love with this game either. And Rutgers, I was on them as well on Friday, and there were just a lot of weird plays in that game. That was also, they do have credit to them. That's a tough place to play. And now they have to hit the road and go to a tough place to play. Just not my favorite game. It's going to be sluggish. We'll get to a couple more. Then again, we have plenty more. If there are games that we didn't get to on this episode, tweet us, Matt_Gajewski at JazzRazBets. What games you want us to add to the Greasy Show? Because we got a couple. We're going to do the ones we don't get to today. But I do want to talk about Indiana and Northwestern, because Indiana, certainly in the qualification for Wagon of the Year, they've been awesome. They're answering every challenge. Got to go into Evanston? I don't know. I'm not super sold on Northwestern, but this could be a tricky little game for them. Certainly the books don't think so. It's pushing 2 touchdowns everywhere. Do you think that's warranted?
Yes. I took this at minus 11, and it's the same. We do this every week with Indiana. They don't open up at enough points. We bet them immediately, get closing line value, and they slaughter their opponent. So I bet them at 11.5. I think under 14 is just fine. I don't know how Northwestern is going to score points. Their quarterback, Jack Lausch, has a 48% completion for 4.8 yards per attempt. He runs a little bit. The O-line is decent too, but he doesn't have any quality skill position players worth mentioning. It's kind of Cam Porter just back on his own. Northwestern lost their center for the year in their most recent game. He's not coming back. Herzog, another interior offensive lineman, has been banged up. I don't think we see him. And I've been very impressed with Indiana. They're starting to squash some of the concerns I had with this team overall. Their O-line was a slight concern to me. They had some injuries. Kidwell, he's missing the year. So they're putting some fresh faces on the offensive line this year. But they're now facing better competition. Maryland's not a great team, but one of their strengths is their pass rush. They currently are 28th in pass rush. Indiana only allowed 6 pressures. This offensive line is keeping Curtis Rourke upright, and he's averaging 73% completion percentage, 10.8 yards per attempt, taking care of the ball just fine, somewhat mobile, elite skill position players everywhere. So I don't think Northwestern has a lot of success on defense, especially with us getting better data points week by week on Indiana. Plus, they're not healthy down there. Haggerty and the edge is out for the year. Bassone's not going to play at defensive tackle. Adeye's still out. He has some sort of broken bone in his hand, I believe. He posted a picture on Instagram. They haven't reported on it. Nice job, Northwestern. But if you can't score because your offense is inept, and that doesn't even factor Indiana's defense, which has been above expectation. And I don't think you can stop Indiana. Like, how does this just not turn into a bloodbath? The only thing is pace. The value of the point is important. Northwestern plays slow. But does it matter? I just think this is such a wide discrepancy. Indiana is a smash play. This might be our wagon of the year so far, Ben.
It really might. They've been just awesome. You mentioned keeping Rourke upright. He's been great. This is the best team Indiana's had in 60 years, apparently. So shout out to them, because the Hoosiers, they're doing some things. Yeah, this would be a stupid way to lose a game. You should not drop this game, and you can find sub 14. I'm staring at it right on the screen. Again, just go to the odds screen. You can always find best lines available. All right, we'll do one more. We'll do one more. Then we'll go best bets. Central Florida. What the hell happened to them taking on Florida? Two teams that could seriously use a win. I would say for Florida's coach is probably more urgent. If you don't get this one, might be time to call it 2.5-point home dogs for the Gators. I don't know though. I didn't dig into the game. UCF got straight rolled by Colorado. What happened?
They got rolled. Yards per play was 6.5 for Colorado, 5.8 for UCF. So it's closer than you might have thought. But they didn't have any answer for Shedeur Sanders. They had to play with a deficit, which is not how UCF wants to play. They're a power-based run game that plays well with the lead. They have concerns in their secondary, so facing Shedeur is not great. And then they gave up points to Colorado just without really anything going wrong. Like, they had an interception that turned into an 80-yard touchdown drive for Colorado. They missed a field goal. They had an interception again. They fumbled it's just like fumble 6 for this team. 4 turnovers is not going to cut it against the Colorado offense, which is they're elite at throwing the ball. You need to be able to get after Shedeur and pressure him. They didn't have a lot of success doing that. It ended up in a blowout loss with KJ having to play from behind. Now you go to Florida, who I think is a much better team than Colorado, just across the board. People like to diss Florida, but this is a very talented SEC program that recruits towards the top of the country. So they're rotating quarterbacks, Graham Mertz and Lagway. Both of them have been pretty good. I don't have any issues with whoever's on the field for this team. It's kind of just the chemistry that's a concern. They have 2 injuries at receiver, Khalil Jackson and Eugene Wilson. I wish they were playing, especially Eugene Wilson, but you move forward with Elijah Badger and Shamir Dike, and I don't think people have realized how well this team has recruited receiver. They've been stacking 4 and 5 stars the last couple of years. Players like Andy Jean haven't even really played much. They have a lot of talent behind these players. Their O-line has quietly been better than I thought. They're 5th in pass blocking, 49th in run blocking. That was a major concern heading into the year after how bad they were last year. Guys like Crenshaw Dixon have played better than I thought. And then this defense isn't bad either. You look at where, Florida comes in on defense. They're 37th overall. Their biggest concern is their 91st ranked pass rush. They don't get after the quarterback a ton, but they are 27th in defending the run. That's important against UCF. They do have a couple injuries on defense. Asa Turner, Jakeem Jackson, Aaron Gates in the backfield. A lot of those guys have been out for multiple weeks, so we've kind of seen what they look like without them. Joey Slackman's a rotational defensive lineman, so I don't think it's a huge issue. And then on the UCF side, they move the ball when they can play from ahead, but it's not a great stylistic matchup against Florida's defense, which is better up front. KJ has been volatile. He's 6 turnover-worthy plays already this year, and this is exactly what you expect from KJ Jefferson. When he's kind of like John Rice Plumlee, when he's hitting, UCF can bury you because KJ has excellent dual threat ability. Skill position players are pretty good. Their running backs, at least, are amazing. Their O-line is 2nd in pass blocking, 28th in run blocking, albeit against a pretty easy slate of opponents. They have one good receiver in Kobe Hudson, who was able to produce against Colorado, so that's solid. You got a lot of Travis Hunter. But KJ is volatile, man. When he throws picks, this team loses to Colorado by like 3 scores. That could easily happen against Florida, which makes me nervous. I don't know, man. I was hesitant to begin the week. That was with UCF at a dog price. Now they are the favorite. This is a situation similar to, like, what was the game last week? Western Michigan. Maybe this has gone too far at a certain point. Yeah, that was the game, right? Where we were like, we liked Western Michigan, but then it moved like 4 points.
Yep.
This reminds me of that.
If it hits 3, I might take Florida.
Me too.
And it's close. Some of the 2.5s are already pushing a little juice. So what is wrong with the SEC, man? I mean, the real answer is it's an awesome conference with a lot of parity. But somehow I keep ending up on the wrong end of the Arkansas bets. Anytime I fade them, Arkansas shows up, and then I bet them against the UAB, and they don't. Auburn every week. Correct. I hear you. The only team that has shown up for me is Tennessee. Tennessee's been absolutely fantastic all year. All year. They've just smoked everybody. Florida's actually been useful because I just keep betting against them. Maybe not here, though. All right, here we go. You know the drill. Somehow, maybe there's an alien invasion. They come down, and we have to nominate one person to save Earth. And for some reason, we say, let's pick you. And they ask for a couple picks, and that will determine the fate of society. What would you tell them? Where would we go?
First of all, I hope this continues where you create an elaborate backstory to giving the best bets. It's better than just walking around with change in your pocket.
That's right. Now aliens are here.
For the aliens, my 2 favorite bets are Indiana. I have 11.5. I don't care as long as it's within 14. And even then, I think Indiana is worthwhile. Also, Indiana has just been a very profitable team with their cover margins. Their alt lines have been firmly in play all season long. I think that is, again, the case if you can find some decent pricing. My second one is actually a Friday night bet. It's Syracuse against UNLV. I have a +6.5. I wouldn't want to go much below like a 6 in this case, but they're underrated against the UNLV team, which is a public darling right now after their first game without Sluka. Still think there's a lot of concerns. They haven't been tested a lot while playing from behind. They're the 4th heaviest run team in the country with a questionable quarterback, and they should have lost to Kansas State, a 13% post-game win expectancy in that contest. It's a sell high, buy low situation.
I'm going to add in 2 more of my own. I can't show Syracuse on my screen because I'm in New York, but Syracuse as well. Ole Miss, -9.5. I do think they respond. I'm willing to ride with them. And then I'm going to trust my read here. I really don't understand that this total, I think it's too high in the Michigan game. I know it's a not a high number to begin with. You could also wait on this. I think we might end up testing 42. And if we test 42, I'm really going to bet this for sure. But I still like it at 41. I think that Michigan will have some success, but minimal. And I do not think that Washington will have a lot of success against Michigan's defense. So that's going to be an ugly game, one with points at an extreme premium. Again, friends, we're just getting warmed up for week 6. A lot of good games. We're going to have plenty more on our second episode on Thursday. And then we are making some moves to maybe do some things on Saturday morning as well. Some player props, some recaps, things like that. Don't worry. We got you covered here. On that note, friends, we're going to bounce out of here. For me, for Matt, for all of you guys, get inside the ropes at Tails. Go to oddchopper.com, click Tails, and get in our Discords. It is worth it. You can get these closing lines. Just a really fun community as well. But let's keep the train rolling. Let's get into a matrix zone and start cashing some tickets. So until then, till the next episode, good luck. Enjoy. Talk to you guys soon.